guest this week on the Europe Conversation is EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas. I talked to her about the unprecedented step by the European Commission to propose sanctioning trade with Israel over its war in Gaza. She tells me how she's calling on Germany and Italy and other EU member states to support the measure. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas, thank you very much for joining us on the Europe Conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we have this unprecedented announcement by the European Commission to suspend trade provisions within the EU-Israel Association Agreement. I mean, can you tell us a little bit more of the details on this? Because, of course, it is unprecedented, but the other question is, will it pass amongst the member states?
Well, that is always the question. Remember, in July, I gave the options to European Council, also the foreign ministers, what are the tools to really pressure Israeli government to change course. Because if everybody agrees on the diagnosis, then the question to us is, what do we do about this? And then now the proposals are on the table. One of them is suspension of the trade part of the association agreement. We have a trade of 42.6 billion euros with Israel in 2024. So it is a significant amount. And when it comes to the preferential treatment, then 37% of that trade really has the preferential treatment. So definitely this step will have a high cost for Israel. Now the question you posed is very correct. Will it pass in the Council?
So just to confirm, 37% of 42 billion is what's on the table?
It's the preferential treatment under this association agreement.
So goods coming from Israel will have duties applied to them?
Yes.
Okay. Well, one of the main countries blocking all of this, because it's a qualified majority rather than a unanimous vote on this particular proposal, is Germany. And it has been consistently for the last 2 years. What do you say to the German government if it decides to block this again?
Well, we had very intensive discussions in the Foreign Affairs Council about this. And my question to all counterparts, because it's not only Germany, was that if you agree on the diagnosis that the situation is extremely grave, the situation is disastrous and untenable, then the question is, what do we do about this? If you don't support these measures, then what measures can you support? Bring alternatives. At the same time, Germany has done a step when it comes to halting arms deliveries to Israel, which is a significant step also from Germany's side. And considering their public opinion, it has been difficult for them as well.
Well, announcement today, well, we've seen this Gaza ground offensive. We've also seen in the last week or so the International Association of Genocide Scholars saying that what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. The UN Committee saying the same thing. Of course, Israel will say that this is a response to October 7th Hamas attack, and they're going after Hamas. But what is your impression of the situation in Gaza?
Well, the Gaza offensive will just bring more destruction, devastation, and also loss of civilian lives. We don't see that it has a real result. I mean, the result has to be ceasefire agreed by the parties and release of all hostages. And therefore, we are also supporting all the efforts in regarding that.
And we know it's for the courts to decide if a genocide is taking place, but what's your own impression, given these organisations that are coming out and saying that a genocide is happening and that the Genocide Convention itself says that everybody has a positive obligation to prevent genocide?
Yeah. No, of course, that's why we have been also agreeing with Israel on the humanitarian understanding to really prevent all these atrocities happening, to really help the people on the ground.
Do you think it might be a genocide?
Well, it doesn't really matter what I think, because, as you said, accountability comes from the courts and the international law. So these institutions have stated that this is the analysis, and of course it's up to the courts to decide what is the really accountability for that.
Okay, you made an agreement with Israel just earlier in the summer to substantially increase the amount of humanitarian aid, border crossings and so on, or crossings to allow more trucks come in, but that has not materialised, not in the way that it was agreed, because you must be seriously disappointed, because so at one point there was hope that some people could be saved, but in actual fact, days after, moments after that agreement was signed, or wasn't even signed or was agreed, we saw children being killed at humanitarian sites trying to get water.
Yeah, no, this has been very, very difficult as we have been trying to do what we can to improve the situation on the ground. Now, the understanding that we had many elements. I mean, more trucks getting in. Before July, it was 0 trucks getting in with humanitarian aid. After that, we had altogether over 2,090-something trucks getting in. So it's more than 0, but it's not enough. I agree with you. Also, the reparation of critical infrastructure, the water desalination, the water coming into Gaza, also opening of the border crossings and the routes of Jordan and Egypt. So we saw the implementation of that, but still, I mean, it was not enough. And at the same time, the actions of really shooting at the people in the line of getting humanitarian aid, I mean, that does not go in the right direction, and that's why we are trying to put the pressure on the Israeli government to change the course.
And there was 0 trucks coming into Gaza. I mean, like literally no food coming in, no baby formula, no nothing.
Before July.
Yeah.
After that, yes, there was more.
Israel also attacked in Qatar Hamas leaders amid these hostage negotiations, peace negotiations. Even Israel's greatest ally, the United States, has been very critical of that. I mean, what does that do for the chance of ending the situation?
Well, we see that there is no military solution to that conflict. Otherwise, it would have been already achieved. If we look at this, what is going on in Gaza, so we really support all the diplomatic efforts to achieve ceasefire and also the release of hostages. Unfortunately, we are not there.
And we've heard from the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez that Israel needs to be essentially frozen out from all sporting and cultural events. We've seen some countries, the Netherlands, Ireland and so on, saying that they won't attend the Eurovision if Israel is allowed to do that. What's your own opinion about that freezing out of Israel? A bit like the way South Africa was during the apartheid era.
Yeah. Well, it's also what should be with the Russian athletes, and has been also the steps that have been taken. I mean, this is clearly giving the messages of the international isolation, that, you know, the public of different countries, of those countries, is not supportive of what Israeli government is doing. What I want to really stress is that we also see the manifestations in Israel. It's not the Israeli people, but it's the Israeli government that has taken such actions that are creating also the situation in our public opinion to go against this.
Do you think that they could be branded, or there's something anti-Semitic about this approach, though, to freeze Israelis out?
This is of course the accusation on the other side, and that's why I want to keep the clear distinction that it's not all the steps that we are also doing on the European level. It's not against the Israeli people. It's to change the pressure the Israeli government to change course.
Now, from a Ukrainian point of view, we had those 19 drone incursions into Poland. We also had one last night over the presidential palace. Really, the feeling is that Putin is no longer risk averse when he's doing things like this.
Yeah. No, Putin is clearly testing the West, how far he can go. And now it's up to us what is our response and how strong that is, how far we let them. What we have to keep in mind is that Putin also wants to sow fear inside our societies so that our governments would refrain from supporting Ukraine. Because, you know, saying that, you know, you don't want this war here, so don't support Ukraine, let the Russians have what they want. But this is a wrong approach, because this is exactly what Russians want, that they will get and the aggression will pay off. They will get what they want in Ukraine, and then we are all in danger. I think we have to keep that in mind.
But he's also trying to pinpoint the difference in NATO between the United States approach and the European approach as well. And that's obviously concerning, is it?
Absolutely, and that's why our response should be unity, because he wants to divide us. That's very clear. He wants to divide us in the transatlantic relationship, but also divide us, in Europe, because when we are divided, we are weaker. That's very clear. So our response should be that we are not letting him do that.
But isn't he right, though? I mean, the United States hasn't applied any sanctions since the Trump administration on Russia. Any sort of the threats against Russia around ceasefires, around impacts of not having a ceasefire, they haven't materialised. Donald Trump has not done anything, and there's no sign of any security guarantees.
Yes, if we look at the peace efforts that President Trump has done, Putin is just mocking all those efforts. If you think about the meetings in Alaska, what happened afterwards is just Putin increased its attacks. It was the biggest ever aerial attack against Ukraine, now incursion against Poland. It should give us all a very clear understanding what we are up against, and we are, of course, in contact with our transatlantic partners to have the unity and cooperate also regarding sanctions, because if we want this war to stop, then we should put the pressure on the one who actually wants war, which is Russia.
And what if this happens again, more incursions, particularly because the expensive nature of trying to shoot these down is massive for Poland and NATO, these small drones which are inexpensive, costing a huge amount to defend European territory?
And that's why we have put forward the drone wall idea, so that it doesn't actually cost that much. You have the sensors so that you can get information where the drones are coming, plus you have the interceptor drones, so the drone wall, so to say, drone to take down drones. And that doesn't cost that much, and we have proposed that. And I yesterday was in NATO talking to Sakur also how we can cooperate regarding this, because our interests are very much aligned.
Okay, EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas, thank you very much for joining us on the Europe Conversation.
Thank you.